So do I. Hello, everybody in the chat room. So it just said we can work for 8 hours. I'm wondering what the airline pilot guy show is going to do when they have 9 hour episodes, which is going to happen. I mean, they are slowly increasing. I mean, they might have to find a new medium.
3 hours and climbing.
Okay, almost ready here. What am I supposed to be doing on this page? Oh, getting the show notes. Tonight's episode is brought to you by beer. Beer, because podcasting is stressful. Yay, beer. I thought that was funny. Open link. Open link. Open link. Open link. Tell me you don't have a drink. You don't have a drink?
Got my beer?
Okay, good. Because I'm not watching the video right now.
Oh.
Open link. Oh my God, the emotional support peacock.
Have to talk about that.
What else is going on wrong in the world?
Oh, I can go on. I just.
Open that. I think Acme North followed the lead of Acme about this. Is that true? Am I thinking right?
What? Say that again?
I think Acme North followed the way of Acme on the emotional support stuff.
Yes. We teamed up.
Good. We'll talk about that. I mean, frauds, except for the people that really need them.
Oh, I've actually got a story I can share that
Good.
happened last week. So
Thankfully, this is a podcast and we can share stories.
Mhm.
Oh, hey, David Allen. Welcome to the podcast. Okay. I think I finally have everything open for the fourth time because I kept on force closing Safari.
All good on my end.
I'm gonna put that there. No. I want to print you. Print. Come on, print. Print. Thanks. Thanks, Google, for downloading it to a PDF for me to print. Oh, did I add all of the no, I need to do this. You have the Google Doc open?
I do.
All right, I need to add some more arrival demand configuration things into the show notes.
Do you want me to back out of it?
No, you shouldn't be able to. It should pop in there.
Are you just getting that off the OIS site?
Yeah, it's off the OIS site, but it's off the. I don't think this is on the public OIS site.
Yeah, probably not.
I think it's on the intranet OIS site.
Well, what are you looking for? Just the arrival demand stuff?
Well,
FSM?
different configurations.
I think that's on the public site.
I'm not sure.
It's under the East and West directory.
Yeah, but is that on the public
All
site?
right.
That's
so if
fine.
you go to like East direct, if you're looking for a particular airport,
Yeah.
click Newark.
Yeah, the East and the West. Oh, there it is. East directory.
Yeah.
ZTL. ATL. Oh, it is on the public site.
Yeah.
Shoot, I'm not going to add them then. We can just pick airports at random from there.
Yeah.
But I had Chicago, Kennedy, Atlanta, and everyone's favorite San Francisco.
Yeah. Is the FSM public too? I don't know.
The arrival demand chart is public, but FSM is not.
Yeah.
Like we have to. I mean, we'll talk about it, but we have to. An FS.
Yeah, there's a separate program that we have, but
yeah,
training airline FSM. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can look at the arrival demand chart, but I mean it doesn't break up the data.
Yeah.
Clearly as nicely as FSM does. All right, let's get this started before we talk about everything before we start the show.
Sounds good.
Anyone remember how to create a podcast? Because these people that are broadcasting clearly are rusty. Oh, I'm so rusty that it's over here. All right. You start a new one. 3, 2, 1, frog. Flying Life Podcast, episode 32, recorded on March 8th, 2018. Welcome to the Flying Life Podcast, a podcast about just that, flying, aviation, my life. I'm Dispatcher Mike, a dispatcher for a major airline based here in the United States. Joining me again on this episode is Dispatcher Greg, another dispatcher for a different major airline, also still based here in the United States. Dispatcher Greg, it's been way too long since we've done a podcast. How in the heck are you?
Oh my gosh! Well, happy belated Christmas and New Year's and everything else that we've kind of flown by. Yeah, November 30th, I think you said was our last podcast. So, wow. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Oops. We'll talk a little bit about that and why we haven't done anything in however many months that is. Too far for me to count. In this episode, we'll have a little email feedback, which addresses some things. We're going to talk about news. Today, I believe, is the 4th anniversary of the disappearance of MH370. We're also going to talk about the O'Hare expansion, emotional support animals, the Spirit Dispatcher vote, and maybe there's another thing about emotional support animals. I don't know. Greg put those in the show notes. And then the topic, we're going to talk about ground delay programs, how they work, why they happen, and a little bit how airlines manage them. I've been in school the last 2 days. I got one more day of school left, teaching me all the ways of the ATC coordinator position, strategic planning team, as they call it at Acme. Need some strategic planning team training. So it's fresh on my mind. So I figured we'd talk about that. And yeah, and we'll do
Jack of all trades over there.
There's a reason. The more hats you wear at Acme, the more opportunity there is for overtime. So it's a different puzzle, which we'll talk about when we get there. But there might be some monetarily reasons for bidding the desk I did for the next year. Just a little. All right, so let's go ahead and start off some email feedback. I'll go ahead and read these. I got these within the last 2 weeks, which kind of was the motivation to get back into this whole podcast thing. Aloha, Mike. I was wondering if you're still doing your podcast. Haven't seen one posted for a while. Hope all is well. Mahalo. Greg. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for the motivation. And then the first one came about 2 weeks ago, was from Mary Ellen. Hi, your podcast is one of my favorites. Are you creating a new episode? Mary Ellen, GA Cessna 172 pilot. Yo, Greg, Mary Ellen, thank you so much for sending us some feedback and giving us some motivation to get together again and record a podcast. Greg, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy Valentine's Day. Almost happy first day of spring. So, what you been up to? Oh, happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Went in there. I
forgot spring training.
Spring training started. Super Bowl happened.
Yeah.
Everything else in the world happened. So what have you been up to? I've been busy.
Boy. Yeah, busy working. I finally got my international qualification. That's all signed, sealed, and delivered. It seems like it took 3 to 4 months, like 4 months for me to get signed off. Just with the training schedule and me having all this time off in December and January, it just screwed havoc on my training. So as of February, officially Atlantic qualified. So, but the funny thing is, even though I'm qualified now, I'm a relief dispatcher as of January this year. And basically relief meaning you're working all shifts, and they filled the Atlantic qualification based on seniority. So given that my seniority, especially for day shift, is very junior, I never worked the Atlantic region. So I haven't worked it since early February.
Well, good news is there's another shift called midnight shift.
Well, and that's
sure there's plenty of opportunities there.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be on midnights coming up in middle of next week, and some in April. So I'm going to be getting my fair share of midnights and afternoons and all that fun stuff.
I mean, internationally, midnight shift is where it happens. I mean, Atlantic day shift is boring. You're just flight following, doing redispatches, watching airplanes fly across the pond while you read the news and check your 401k.
Exactly, and that's why they're so senior. The most junior person on day shift, Atlantic, I think, has got 25 plus years. So I'll never hold a day shift at Atlantic line, at least not any. I shouldn't say never, but probably not for the next 30 years.
At least it's 25 years at Acme North. It's most of the day shift Atlantic guys have more Acme seniority than I have Earth seniority.
Uh-huh.
They're over 35, 40 years of experience in dispatch. So you got that going for you.
Yeah, so my schedule has been really crazy. I was on a stretch of 18 straight days finally ended last week. Self-induced. I did a lot of trades. I'm trying to get time off over the summer. So can't be.
I want to make sure you mentioned that was self-induced 18-day stretch.
Uh-huh. Some
people would say you're certifiable. I think the longest I've gone is 10. And that's 10 too long, in my opinion.
Yeah, 10 days. I think prior to this was 9. And once I hit day 11, my head was spinning. I didn't know what day of the week it was. I'm just kind of like, okay, I got 6 more days. Okay, I got 5 more days. But
yeah, I never keep track of that. So this last podcast, Dispatcher Mike has been very busy with, first of all, I got bored at work one evening and I went and got a new certificate. And that certificate would be the Part 107 commercial drone operator certificate, which I would have to say, as a commercially rated pilot and a dispatcher and all the other certificates that I have, it was probably the easiest FAA certificate I've ever gotten in my life. I think the hardest part was going to the FSDO to prove and show them I got everything, and logging into IACRA and filling out the 8710 form online. I think that was the hardest part of the certificate. And seeing as I was had this certificate now sitting in my pocket, I kind of decided to spend some money and get a quadcopter and a nice camera and some other things. And I decided, well, while I'm at it, I might as well start a business, and incorporated a small business and all of things like that. And I've been spending time trying to get it off the ground, which is kind of fun getting it off the ground. But all in all, it's fun. Flying the quadcopter is fun, especially when it's too cruddy of weather to go flying in the real airplane. I can still go outside and fly the quadcopter, and it's kind of a unique medium that I'm getting into. And I'm kind of expand it a little bit and try some new different things there. So there's that. And then, that whole holidays thing came into play. And then we had the wonderful month of February, which, if you've listened to the show for a while, understand and remember, I did an episode about a year ago about why February sucks in our household. And you can go back. I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode about February, and February being pretty much a month of nothing in our house for obvious reasons. So that's where my time has gone, and all of that. In the meantime, we bid again for at Acme. We bid year to year, April 1st through March 31st is our bid year, and we get to change desks and all of that. So I bid a new shift. I'll be switching off of my baby Airbuses starting April 1st to the 717s. The Angry Puppies is the new fleet that I'll be working, and I did that to get some ETC training. SBT is what we call it at Acme, the strategic planning team, where they kind of deal with all of the irregular operations. So in the last couple of days, I've been in school for that, and that's kind of the focus for today's topic on that is that. So that's what's happening. I apologize that we haven't gotten an episode out in a while, but we're back, and maybe we'll be regular. Maybe the podcast will take some prune juice or something. Will be more regular.
Hey, can I ask you about that drone thing? The drone certification, is that
Yeah.
a test you had to take, or is it just what is the process for doing that?
As a commercial, as a certificate holder already, as a airplane, or even think any pilot operator already, it is literally a 90-minute online course through FAA safety and the FAA safety site to get your Part 107 certificate. So I honestly, I recommend any pilot to go out there, spend the 90 minutes, and just go ahead and get yourself another piece of plastic to put in your wallet. It was very easy to do. Now, if you live in my area, I don't think you guys should do it. You should leave all the business to me after I after I find it. But for the non-pilot type, I'm not sure exactly what kind of training is required to get your Part 107. But I mean, if you're a pilot, I mean, you basically have the knowledge. All they go through and teach you is the rules that for the Part 107, and Part 107 isn't exactly a very lengthy regulation anyway. I mean, it's not like Part 91 or 121, which is basically a book. It's more of a pamphlet. It's just a couple of pages long. So
very cool.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into that.
It's fun, man. I mean, we went on a trip with the boys to go stay on an aircraft carrier a week or two ago in Charleston with their Cub Scout pack, and I took the quad with me, and I'm like, hey, this would be fun to take the quad, but it's in Charleston. It was windy every day, and then when we got to the museum in the boat, there's a big sign that said no drone flying and no model aircraft flying allowed, and I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. And they were giving helicopter rides right there as well. So even though it's not listed as an airport, I probably would have mixed the quad and the helicopter in the same area that close anyway. It just wouldn't have been a good for either of us. And I wanted to protect my investment, and I'm pretty sure they didn't want to deal with a quadcopter flying around where they were trying to land. So Although if I went up to 400 feet, the way although they were flying in the area, I'm pretty sure I would have been okay. But anyway, continuing on, let's go ahead and start with the news after I find this. All right, this comes from The Guardian. Crew searching for MH370 is optimistic of finding the missing plane. It's been 4 years since MH370 mysteriously disappeared. That anyone who does not remember, MH370 was a flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, China, that went missing and then put a huge search out. And it's believed that the aircraft made a U turn somewhere around Singapore and headed south into the Indian Ocean. Since then, it has not been found after millions of dollars in searches, but parts of the aircraft have been washed up on the shore of the Indian Ocean, all the way in India and Madagascar, I believe, somewhere
Yeah.
over that way. They've had some pieces, and those pieces had part numbers on it. And those part numbers were, and serial numbers were confirmed to be the parts installed on the 777 of MH370. That was the first quick accident for Malaysian, and then about a year later, a few months later, they had MH17 that was shot down by a Buk missile over the Ukraine, and so that pretty much started the restructuring of Malaysian Airlines, who was still being still an operating airline, and I believe they have turned things around. Um, so this company has signed a contract with the Malaysian government, and it's kind of almost uh, an at risk contract that they signed. That it was um, strictly for only a find it. They only get paid if they found it, and
Yeah.
so they have 90 searching days. That's not calendar days or anything. That's days of active searching to try and find it. And this is Seabed uh, is I believe the ship that is going through. Ocean Infinity ship uh, is going through and trying to find the aircraft. So I hope they find it. Really do kind of want to see what happened to the aircraft, but for me, I kind of have a feeling this might be the Amelia Earhart of our century.
Yeah, it's amazing that they just can't find this thing. And, I mean, obviously there's millions of square miles of ocean to find it, but it's out there somewhere. And hopefully, they get something, get some sort of pinpoint or, I mean, they know where parts washed up. So it's got to be somewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah, it's like another thing. Paul Allen recently just found the USS Lexington, which was kind of knew exactly near where it went down, but still no one had ever actually found the shipwreck of the USS Lexington, which is a World War II U.S. aircraft carrier that was sunk. And so they found that, but I mean it's a lot bigger. I mean it's almost like finding a knitting needle in a haystack. I mean you're literally trying to find a pin in the
Yeah.
ocean that might not be intact. I mean it might be scattered over pieces. I mean, as the CNN article and video showed to us, a 777 has a hard time maintaining altitude when it runs out of fuel.
That is a true statement.
Yeah, so
I mean, and if it's been how many years? 4 years,
four
with the
years.
water, who knows? Like you said, I mean, it could have disintegrated to pieces. They could have rusted over, broke apart.
Huh.
But
Many theories. I mean, some people say it might be sabotage. Some people say it's aliens. Some people say that they had a rapid decompression and the crew didn't get their tanks masks on in time, or maybe it was the O2 bottle was showing full, was empty. Maybe everyone passed out. Who knows? Um, you know, I'm hoping for more of a non-mechanical failure in rapid decompressions like that. Some ones that pop in my head is the death of the golfer Payne Stewart, where his biz jet decompressed rapidly on a short flight in the southeast and finally ran out of fuel up in the Dakotas. And the autopilot stayed connected, engines flamed out, and the autopilot was still trying to maintain altitude, and it didn't. And it finally stalled, spun, and took a steep dive into a field up in the vast area of North Dakota. So, I mean, it's a very possibility for this aircraft as well. So, um, maybe we'll know sometime in our lifetime what happened to the airplane.
and for the families, who have people on that flight, I'm sure they want some sort of closure too. Find out what happened, where it went, how it happened, that kind of thing. So yeah, for the safe sanity of them and everybody else, it'd be nice to be able to find that thing.
Yeah, and in the chat room, our friend Mainman Micah says also Helos Airways 522 also had the same uh, decompression fate. So it wouldn't be the first time, and hopefully it's the last, but no, we don't know that yet. You want to read the next article or talk about the next article? I'm excited about it. It's about dang time.
O'Hare.
O'Hare.
So anyone who's ever traveled through O'Hare knows what kind of a bottleneck that airport is. It's a complete disaster on the best of days. So
Terminal One, man. I remember growing up in Chicago. I remember when T1 was built, and it was the grandest terminal there was at O'Hare at the time. Last year I walked through it because we had a long. I think we missed our first flight, so we had another hour and a half. Missed it by me, and there weren't enough seats for me and the family, me and the boys to get on. So we had to wait for the next flight. And so we took the shuttle bus from T2 over to the T1 over on the to the C concourses. I was walking through the C gates. It's right C gates, the ones the satellite.
Yep.
Walking through the C gates, I'm like, this isn't as great as I remembered it was. I mean,
yeah.
This
in the narrow. 80s, back in the 80s and 90s, I think it was late 80s, they built the terminal. It was all cool. It was like, oh, they got the underground, the lights. But yeah, but if you're coming in at gate B1 and you got to go over to C32 or another terminal, yeah, you're looking at a good 30, 40-minute walk.
Yeah, and just the passageway down the middle compared to Hartsfield Jackson, where I am now, it's narrow, it's cramped, almost kind of claustrophobic. So, O'Hare expansion, explain what are they going to do to make O'Hare better? Because they've completely, since in the last 10 years, changed O'Hare to a set of 3 or 4 parallel runways into a monster 6 parallel runway behemoth. So finally, there's something with the gates. Explain.
So, for whatever reason, I can't get the article in its entirety up here, but the city is investing $6 million,
billion,
and 8-year project to. They're going to build a completely new terminal, tear down like the current international terminal, I believe, Terminal 5, and going to build. It's going to be like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a satellite terminal for each airport or each airline, if I'm understanding that correctly.
It's almost like an Atlanta hybrid. So they're going to expand on the T5.
Yep.
They're going to expand on the side of T5, and then they're going to demolish Terminal 2, which is currently housed airlines like Delta, JetBlue, and United are in Terminal 2. The United regional
Yeah.
jets are in Terminal 2. And trust me, overall, this is an amazing plan. So I'm fully backing of this. This is absolutely amazing. So they're gonna rip down T2 after they move everybody out to T5. So basically O'Hare is going to have Terminal 1 and Terminal 3, which is currently United and American, the two major hubs, uh, two hub cities there in Chicago. They're going to have those two terminals basically stay. They're going to rip down Terminal 2 and make a new international terminal
Yep.
in that spot, which is going to be a huge benefit for said American and United Airlines, where their international arriving passengers will able to connect in uh, a better time frame. That are not going to have to leave security, get their bags, recheck their bags, and go back through security again over there in Terminal 1 or Terminal 3. They'll be able to connect with ease. While the other airlines, the KLMs, Air France's, Virgin's, Lufthansa's, all the other major Asian carriers that operate to Chicago who don't connect or don't partner with American and United will still go to Terminal 5 and do it. And then they're going to attach a satellite to Concourse C, the C gates off of Terminal 1. And then they're going to build a third satellite out there. So um, I call it almost like an Atlanta hybrid. You're going to have the United American terminal cluster, and then you're going to have the everybody else cluster.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of American, they're opposed to the plan. They're actually fighting it with City Council because they believe United has a unfair advantage, and that that United had a secret deal with the city to get more gates. So
But but I read a Cranky Flyer post which kind of explained it more. Cranky Flyer basically said it's basically they're complaining over the number of common use gates in what would be the new Terminal 2 versus the American slash United gates. They are feeling that United is getting more gates than they are.
yeah,
Um, but what I mean, just talking about how O'Hare works now for American and United, man, it's a real pain in the butt for their international operations. You have to arrive in Terminal 5, and because you're a hub and spoke connecting the airport, then you have to then drag the airplane from Terminal 5 to your current terminal so you can connect all your domestic
right.
passengers. Uh that's a logistical nightmare for an airline.
Yeah, there's plenty of delays that are caused by that.
I mean,
um,
there's
yeah,
no quick turns. I mean, you can't
no,
have
you
a
can't.
I mean, here in Atlanta, shoot, you have an airplane come in international, dump the passengers, go through customs, clean it, all that. You can be back out in 90 minutes to 2 hours. And
Yeah,
over in O'Hare, that process is you add an hour to it just for the movement, at least.
at least an hour. And at the end, it's going to be more convenient for the customers. And another neat plan, if they ever get this done, is the western access to the airport. So currently, you have to drive. If you're going into O'Hare, you have to go all the way around the terminal. If you're taking like the expressway, go all the way around the front, then like turn back like west to get in. So with the proposals, they're going to have a western entrance so that you won't have to drive all the way around, which will save a lot of time.
But looking at the terminal area plan in this Crane's Chicago Business article that we have posted here, it almost doesn't look like there is a possible for a western access because they put employee parking all the way over on the west side. I mean, and that's another thing I was hoping O'Hare was going to do, that they would take that Elgin O'Hare highway that kind of dead ends into the west part of O'Hare and somehow connect it in.
Yeah.
But I mean, it almost looks like O'Hare is setting themselves up for further expansion. After you get these satellite concourses built, satellite concourse 1 and 2, as they're calling it now, you can have 3, 4, 5, and 6 all the way until you run out of airport property. I mean, they have set themselves up to become a mega airport. It almost looks like they want to try to become the world's busiest airport again.
They do. We gotta take over. What is it, Atlanta that has the biggest airport?
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta compete with them.
If you haven't looked at the heard, or is this the first time you're hearing about the O'Hare expansion? I really highly recommend you go into the show notes and click on this the link that we'll post in there to this Crane Chicago Business article. I think it is the most in depth and the most pictures that have been done in here. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's adding more gates, which is greatly needed in O'Hare right now. Their capacity well exceeds their gates. That's a completely gate constrained airport right now, and by gate constrained means you can put land and take off you can land a lot more airplanes at O'Hare than you have gates to park the people at.
The only thing I worry about with this, and again, I can't really pull up the link here, so I'm looking at the Cranky Flyer site here. Um, it looks like they're going to be closing the the northwest runways, the parallel runways,
Yes.
which
The former 14.32s are gonna go bye-bye.
that may be a problem when we have in Chicago some gusty winds out of the northwest, and you're going to have some pretty nasty crosswinds when you're trying to land east-west, and you got that gusty wind. Um, you might see delays associated with that or restrictions. So, I don't know if they completely thought that out, but
This whole O'Hare modernization plan started whole you just talk about the scope and the number of planning that it takes to get something like this off the ground. This whole idea started when I was in college, um, back in 0102. I remember talking about this at Lewis University in our classes and the whole super east-west runway complex and all of that. And this is the time where our local airport was trying to build a north-south runway so we can do flight training days when the wind was gusting out of the north and out of the south. So you're going to have 9 right, 9 and 2-7 right and left. Then the 2-8 right, center, and left is going to be there still. And then what was 3-2 right has already been closed. That's not an active runway anymore. And now the current 1533 that is completely shortened, and which was great for United and Delta, who currently lives in Terminal 2, which if you're departing to the north, man, that used to be a very quick taxi out of O'Hare. That was a push the gate, taxi 3-2 left, Tango 10, and away you go. And right now it's a quick push the gate going north to runway 33. See you later. But that runway is going away to allow this expansion. So it is completely different. And like you said, um, Atlanta seems to manage okay with our runway configuration. But where we are, whenever we have strong gusty winds, they're either out of the south at 1-4 or out of the north at 3-2. And so you can still have some decent crosswind limits. I think it's only been once or twice in the last at least 8 years that we've had crosswind limitations that I can remember down here in Atlanta.
yeah, we had it a few weeks ago with the snow system we had. We had winds straight north, gusting 35 knots, and O'Hare was pretty much in meltdown mode.
Single runway operation for O'Hare.
Yep, couldn't use any of those runways. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. And the current arrival rate on a good day is 114 airplanes an hour. So if this could increase the flow to maybe 140, I don't know. I haven't seen what their proposed arrival rate is or what they want to have as an arrival rate.
Yeah, 114 is the best for O'Hare
At its current state, right?
at its current state. And there's three configurations.
And during the peak periods, you got the 22Z to 1Z hour. You're pushing very close to 114 an hour,
right?
If not more.
And we'll talk about this whole thing. What we're talking about, arrival rates and all that. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show to fully explain that more. But just to give some perspective, Atlanta, our best arrival rate is 132 aircraft an hour, and they don't get anywhere near that. The other one that I can think of at the top of my head is Denver, which is also which their best arrival rate is 152 landings an hour, which they don't get anywhere near at all.
If they get 50 an hour, it's a lot.
Yeah, and then even still, Memphis is 92 an hour, and then let me see if I can find another. Is it Indy? Yeah, the other big one, Louisville. It's big, huge hub airport is only 58 an hour. So, and then just to give some further perspective, we'll go and look at LaGuardia. Their largest arrival rate, which they never hit, is 40 an hour, and then Kennedy, it would be 60 an hour, but we'll talk about why 60 and then 58. But we'll highest arrival rate. We'll dig into more of that in a little bit, and then finally, Newark is a 40 rate is their best, or 48.
Yeah, if they can get the overflow.
So, yeah, it's we'll talk about arrival rates and all that when we get to the topic, but it's good for O'Hare. I'm glad they're finally becoming a modern airport, and I really do think that this long drawn out process, I think this will go until 2024, 2025, until it's all completed, is going to set O'Hare up to be a big, huge, major airport. Which with Chicago and all of its businesses, this will definitely charge their economic engine of the airport out there. So, great for Chicago. So, you put two links in here in the show notes for emotional support and animals. Uh, let's tackle this topic. Why don't you go ahead and introduce these two?
I have two in there.
You do. You have a.
Oh, you know what? It's a two. Well, sort of.
Or is it both about the emotional support?
Yeah, I didn't realize I put them both in there, so it's really just one. So, but the one that really I wanted to put in there is how there was a passenger trying to bring a peacock on board the aircraft. I believe it was San Francisco as an emotional support animal. Obviously, that's, in my opinion, not a emotional support animal, but it's interesting how yeah, peacock, a bird, in an airplane. Peacock.
Really. I love society.
I can understand dogs. We see dogs. We see all sorts of. I think one time someone brought a monkey on board. That was their emotional support animal, a monkey, and it was allowed on board the aircraft.
I'll allow you to talk more while I drink my beer.
Yeah, I'm drinking one too when I hear about these. So airlines are, at least the airline I work for, is starting to tighten their belts on these emotional support animals. I mean, I guess in current state, anyone can go online, pay $50, fill out a form, and say, I have this medical condition and I need to travel with this, whatever it is, as my emotional support animal. Print it out, you bring it to the airline, and they'd say, okay, you got this form. It's signed by whoever it's got to be signed by. Bring them on. Well, that is now changed, and the process is becoming much more difficult. You have a sound clip for clapping?
No, that's my sound clip for clapping. Clapping. And if I had an applause, I'd finally say it. But no, it's got out on hand. It's ridiculous. We've at Acme have had emotional support animals attack flight attendants, bite other passengers before. You can go on Amazon.com and buy an emotional support vest for your animal and critter. And it's honestly just a way for people to create fraud opposed to taking their animal with them wherever they go. It's
right.
You don't need to take your pet with you wherever you go. If you want to have a dog and you want to travel, find a neighbor to take care of them and all that. Now, what really gets me against this is these people it's taking away the legitimacy of the people that actually need the service dogs and the service animals and the people that have PTSD and all of that actually would need for their mental health a emotional support animal. I mean, you say monkey. There are service monkeys that I've seen videos before that go shopping with people that are quadriplegics and grocery shop for them. You jump up, take things off the shelf, put it in the basket, jump back on their owner, and go. I mean, that is a service animal. They're creating a service for a human being. Now, if your emotional support animal takes a poop in the middle of the concourse and you just keep on walking, I'm sorry, but a trained animal would not do that. They know better.
Right.
And don't get me started on the emotional support Shetland pony.
So I had a few weeks ago, I had a flight with it was an emotional support dog. Okay, dogs are very common on board the aircraft. But I guess this dog got loose at some point and just started running up and down the cabin. And not only was he running up and down the cabin, he was also had bladder issues.
Did he have too much to drink?
Yes. And coming out the other end as well. So I get a message from the captain through ACARS. Goes, hey, dispatch, we've got a dog loose in the cabin. He's pooping all over the place. Flight attendants are telling me it's stinking up the cabin. Should we continue on? What do you recommend? Now I think they were going to LA or something, and they were an hour out. And I'm like, well, I don't think we're going to divert the airplane for that. But, I guess they wound up getting control of the dog and put him in the bathroom, locked him up in there to kind of contain him, because it was just unruly and they weren't able to, control him. So situations like that, you're going to bring an animal to take control of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking at, I just pulled up United's policy now, beginning March 1st. United,
hold on, I have Acme sister airline Delta also introduced a new policy also effective March 1st. And so let me see this. This is just popped out here, and I think it's important why these changes are happening. Delta. This is from the Delta News release that we'll put in the show notes, and we'll put United's press release in there as well. Delta carries approximately 700 service or support animals daily, nearly 250,000 annually. Putting that into perspective, Delta carries more than 180 million passengers annually. Customers have attempted to fly with comfort turkeys, gliding possums known as sugar gliders, snakes, spiders, and more, ignoring the true intent of existing rules governing transport of service and support animals. Can be a disservice to customers who have real and documented needs. Delta has seen an 84% increase in the reported animal incidents since 2016, including, like you just said, urination, defecation, biting, and even a widely reported attack by a 70-pound dog. In 2017, Delta employees reported increased acts of aggression, barking, growling, lunging, and biting from service and support animals, behavior not typically seen in these animals when properly trained and working. Folks, this is why the airlines have been trying to get the federal government to regulate this, and it hasn't happened, so they're just doing it themselves. So I personally applaud Delta and United for taking a stand against this.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. What is the United say?
So this is just off their website. Effective March 1st, United will require additional documentation for customers traveling with any emotional support animal or a psychiatric service animal. In addition to providing a letter from a licensed mental health professional, customers will need to provide a veterinary health form documenting the health and vaccination records for the animal, as well as confirming that the animal has been trained to behave properly in a public setting. This change only applies to emotional support and psychiatric service animals. So, no longer just a form off the internet saying, here, I got this form, I can bring my animal on board. Well, now you need to have a vet, they need to sign off on it, that kind of deal. So, I mean, hopefully that'll help eliminate some of the stuff that we see today.
Delta brings me a little bit more. These documents need to be submitted to the airline at least 48 hours in advance of travel. And it also says in their press release, Delta does not accept exotic or unusual service or support animals. Additional information of these types of animals or other questions can be seen at the link below. So that takes them to their general link. But in the OCCs, NOCs, SOCs, whatever we want to call them, we see this stuff every day, and this ridiculousness every day. And I'm glad that there's at least two major airlines taking a stand against it.
Absolutely. I think all the airlines need to get on board with this, not just the two big ones. You know, there's obviously other ones out there that need to step up and
I think the other ones are still waiting to take the stand, see how it goes, and maybe we'll then take a stand and join in. And maybe, just maybe, the Department of Transportation or Congress will go ahead and act and crack this down a little bit.
Let's hope.
All righty. Last but not least, in the news, we have Spirit Airlines. This is from BNA.com, which I believe is Bloomberg Business. Yeah, it's from Bloomberg. Spirit, this is from February 21st. Spirit Airlines flight dispatchers vote to switch unions. And it says flight dispatchers at Spirit Airlines voted 45-0 in union represented by the Professional Airline Flight Control Association, aka PAFCA. The dispatchers collective bargaining agreement between Spirit and Local 540 of the Transportation Workers Union, an AFL-CIO affiliate. The agreement will be amendable in August, according to the report. But this is basically another dispatcher union dumping the TWU and going for PAFCA, which is not affiliated with the AFL-CIO or any other major organization, but it is a small group of dispatchers representing dispatchers. And if you look at, I believe if you look at the PAFCA website, if it is working, remember, it's run by dispatchers. We're not exactly all that technically savvy. I believe PAFCA now represents the membership of United, Delta, Spirit, I think ExpressJet. Oh no, Endeavor on the regional side, and is in the talks with other major airlines dispatch groups that have gone through major mergers recently where their vote is up for ratification. So it is
Yay.
let's be fully transparent. Um Dispatcher Greg and I are both members of the PAFCA union, and I completely enjoy the PAFCA union. I used to be a member of the TWU at a former airline, and I feel that my representation with the company is far superior with PAFCA, and they don't rate my paycheck to do so, which makes me very happy. I love the way the union is structured. PAFCA International, the big umbrella over all of the locals, are they're not money hungry. They're just dispatchers looking after dispatchers, trying to make the profession better. And we already see that where every time one company comes up for a new contract and a new union negotiations, the other companies, all the presidents of all the dispatch companies share their contracts with each other. And you can, if you know everyone's contract, you can see where the language from each person's contract comes from. And there are some airlines that are leading the way, and there are some airlines and dispatchers that are benefiting from it. So, in reality, it's not just each local, it is a group of unified dispatchers across major airlines that are benefiting from this union. And it, to me, it's one of those uh, pure quintessential unions that there's real no conflicts of interest. We're just trying to help everyone be better.
And you brought up a good point about the union dues and how they're not there to rape you and rape your paycheck and all that. One thing that I've noticed PAFCA over a lot of other unions out there is the leadership of the union is out there working the floor. They're not sitting at some big countryside office somewhere at a desk and doing newsletters and doing stuff to waste time and money. They're out there with you working the floor, working a desk, and they're just go. They'll always tell you what's going on. So I like that they're people just working like you are.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. And I don't know how your local is set up, but in our local, the only two paid union board positions are the president and the treasurer. There's the only two that get paid. Everyone else is doing it as a volunteer position. And every time that positions come up, there's usually one or two people striving to volunteer, especially if, we think it's time for a replacement.
Yeah, same way.
Yeah. I mean, it's no one's getting rich off of us. We're all just people helping people. We're dispatchers
Yep.
being dispatchers. But
And
I
lots of Me
welcome
Too clauses.
I am welcoming Spirit to the PAFCA fold, and I am hoping that our brethren dispatchers at other unions and airlines across the USA join us. We're stronger in numbers, and we're a small minority. There's not 10,000 dispatchers at Delta United and American. We're a small group. There's 400, 400, and 400. There's this very small voice doing a very important job for the airline. I mean, your dispatcher union goes on strike, you're done. There's no replacements. There's nothing. You're sunk.
Yep.
So keep us happy. We'll make you happy. So I think that's it's gonna wrap up the news. So let's go ahead and play this and get into the topic of the week. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're getting into the going through some training work to really get into how ATC works and a coordination in our airline when it comes to delays, aviation, ground delay programs, and ground stops and things like that. Those are always implemented by the FAA. The FAA will go and say we're running a ground delay program for JFK due to blank. And there's some sort of constraint that's causing a drop in the arrival rate. So we're going to go through and try to bring this down to a 101 level if we can. This is the FAA we're talking about. There's a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms that we're talking about. So let's start basic. The best an airport can do is when there's not a cloud in the sky and there's calm winds. And the most amount of airplanes that an airport can land at that time is called basically their arrival rate. How many airplanes can blank airport arrive at a certain time? So as we kind of talked about and teased about earlier, each airport has a set amount of arrival rates. Now, if this is curious to you, I will put some links into the show notes, maybe some pictures kind of guiding you along the way to where you get it. Because it is the government and it's somewhat hidden but yet public. But if you go to fly.faa.gov/OIS, on the left side, there's a bunch of menus, and there's 2 tabs and links that say East Directory and West Directory. And both of those tabs are going to get you some funky little letters that start with a Z. And those stand for the centers that they're in. Or you can just click on the East Directory and West Directory, and you'll get a map of the same those letters. So say, for example, you're looking for Cleveland. You click on the East Directory, you click on that link, you click on the ZOB, that link where Cleveland is, and then you click on the Cleveland Airport, and now you'll get all the configurations of Cleveland in different situations. Now, you'll have arrival runways and departure runways. So, for example, at Cleveland, the best arrival rate there is when you're arriving on 6 left and runway 10, and you're departing on runway 6 right. You can get in VFR conditions, those not in cloud in the sky type conditions, you can land 67 planes an hour. And then there's a note section. So any of those people that are truly geeky that want to go through and dig into this more. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them in. I'd love to talk about this more. I mean, I'm going to school to learn more about it. So we'll do that. So what happens is when you have more demand, aka more airplanes that want to land at an airport that exceeds the arrival rate. For example, if you have 70 airplanes that want to land at an airport and the weather stinks and they can only land 40 airplanes an hour, then you are over capacity by 30 flights. And therefore, the FAA, to protect their controllers, save fuel, and prevent diversions, are going to put out these things called ground delay programs. Now, these ground delay programs happen for some sort of constraint, and we'll talk about those for a little second. A constraint is just something that is constraining the flow into an airport. Now, those constraints can be weather, construction, VIP movements, anything like that. Greg, what else can you think of? I mean,
pretty much. I mean, those
are the big topics, the big broad ones. Let's talk about weather. I think of the ground delay programs, weather is 99.8% of the root cause for all ATC-related delays and ground delay programs. And just basically, there's a lack of concrete and ability and safety margin to land the same number of airplanes if it was a good day. So we'll start with wind. Greg, why would it be a problem if it's windy?
Well, you got crosswind limitations on certain airplanes, right? So you got using our Cleveland example, you're using 6 left and 10 right or 10 for landing. Well, if you got a strong wind out of, say, the south, right? Well, maybe you can't use that configuration. Now you have to use a different runway. And now that's going to affect your flow coming in.
Yes. That's right.
Basically,
now,
what it is.
Why does New York, Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark put out a program for wind when the wind is only 10 knots?
Because they can't handle the demand. Or that's a loaded question there, actually. But
no, I know it is. But see, I have the answer because I just went to school for it, and it makes sense. And it makes sense now because for the last, what is it, 10, 11, 12 years I've been doing this job. When I'd see wind and I'd look at the METAR and say, really? 8 knots? I got to be delayed for 8 knots of wind? Are you kidding me? Well, when you look at the flow into New York and how you put in all of the airports together, a wind out of this certain direction, out of the southeast, is the worst wind that you can have for New York because now the flows are on top of each other. If they're landing 13 in Kennedy, that means they're kind of landing over the top of Newark and LaGuardia. So if they're landing that way, well, that's a problem because now you got airplanes flying over the top of each other, and obviously that's not a good thing. No, it's really unique. I mean, the New York airports are just one crazy beast of animals that are unique.
What I've just, with my knowledge, I mean, I don't know the whole ATC program to the depth that you do, but with Newark, you know, they have that, you know, the 2-2s, and then they could use the 4s, but they also have that key component, the runway 11, which is the overflow runway in Newark. And if you can't get, the winds are not favorable that you could use that overflow runway, every day you'll be in a ground delay program in Newark.
Every day, because the primary carrier in Newark loves ground delay programs.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, you guys do.
You could have a clear VFR day.
And you guys want a ground delay program.
Ground delay program.
Ground delay program, please.
Yep. Average delay, 90 minutes.
Welcome to Newark.
Yeah, it's a rare day that you don't see one, and if we don't have one, it's because they're able to get that overflow.
Another problem lately with Newark is they just got rid of the slots.
Yeah.
It's no longer a slot controlled airport at Newark, and if they're rid of the slots, they can now just overschedule the airport. They are trying to put 10 pounds of airplanes in a 5-pound airport. And that's why you're now getting ground delay programs almost every day to Newark. Good job, airlines.
Yep.
I applaud you for your capitalism, but you're kind of hosing yourself.
And you had mentioned that Newark has, I believe, 48 at their max, can handle 48 an hour.
Yeah, I have it here. 48 an hour. Landing 22 left, runway 11, departing 22 right, 48 an hour. Not used during low VMC or IMC. Needs to be VFR for that to happen.
So if you look at the arrival demand at Newark, usually starting around 18Z, which is what, noon, 1 o'clock?
It's 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock Newark time?
1 o'clock standard time, 2 o'clock.
So from about 18Z to about 1Z, so you're looking at about 1 p.m. to 7 or 8 o'clock at night, local time. Newark's arrival demand is almost consistently 40, 45 airplanes an hour.
Right.
And in some banks, you might even have 50.
Yep. Now, I mean, if the winds are in the right way at Newark, just not to just dump on Newark, if you can arrive 4 right and land 4 right and 11 and depart 4 left. So now your winds are out of the north-ish, northeast. You have a 48 rate VFR and a 46 rate low VMC. So you're still good. I mean, that's no problems there. It's when you get to the IMC, which is clouds less than 1,000 feet or visibility less than 3 miles, and the low IMC, which is I think what ceilings below 500 and visibilities below a mile is low IMC, and you get down to a 36 rate or a 29 rate, or if it's really really bad in Newark, you go down to a 16 rate. Ugh,
which was yesterday,
not good
or
for you.
pretty close to a 16, right?
We'll talk about yesterday. Let's talk about yesterday now. Another constraint. It seems to be a theme this month in the airlines in the Northeast of snow and ice. Yuck. We just had a bad one yesterday. Big nor'easter came up, dumped a bunch of snow. I believe Newark closed for a while. Airport
They
closed.
did for 3 hours,
It
or at least the NOTAM was for 3 hours.
sucks for them. Glad I wasn't working. Sucks for those that were. Oh, Greg, you were working yesterday. I'm sorry.
I was working yesterday. I was working the Transcon flights out of our hubs out west to the East Coast.
Your hub in New York. Oh,
Yeah. It was.
how'd that go for you?
Well, let's just say it did not work out well.
Hmm.
Yeah. Although I do have to say,
Passengers got to see Chicago.
Chicago, Washington, Pittsburgh, lots of places in the Ohio Valley took airplanes. When you get weather situations like the nor'easter and so forth, known big weather issues, most airlines will be proactive and cancel their schedules, just knowing that the airports are not going to be able to handle the demand based on that weather. So I'll give you an example of, hang on a second here if I can pull this up. Just looking at the TAF yesterday for LaGuardia. So the forecast at 21Z to 23Z, there's a tempo. For those who don't understand what I'm talking, it's basically a temporary situation, and you got your forecast, and then you got a temporary situation. So the main forecast was winds out of the northeast at 32 knots, 1 mile of visibility, and light snow with overcast ceilings at 400 feet.
Good to go. Let's rock. Blast off.
Then, this is where it gets fun. There was a temporary weather situation from 21Z to 23Z, half a mile, heavy snow, fog, overcast at 800 feet, and the winds were out of the north at 20 knots.
This is LaGuardia.
This is LaGuardia.
Did you see? Hold on a second. This is now geek talk, and I know you're a weather geek. Did you see the TAF where they had thunder snow, heavy thunder snow in the forecast?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, yeah. Half a mile, thunder snow, and GS is what, grapple?
No, it's
or pellets.
Small snow grains or pellets, basically
Pellets.
snow grains.
Yes. So pellets, fog, overcast at 800.
Basically, the precipitation was so heavy it didn't have a chance to become flakes. It came down and clumped in pellets, and there was thunder. And usually, in order to get thunder, you need warm conditions. You need unstable air with updrafts. But this storm was so powerful that there was reported thunderstorms in the vicinity in LaGuardia yesterday with heavy snow. And
Someone got struck by lightning. Did you hear about that?
No, someone got struck by lightning.
Struck by lightning, yeah. While it's snowing, you got struck by
Not
lightning.
funny for them, but
No.
just as a weather geek, that's the last thing you would think would happen when you're outside shoveling your snow is you get struck by lightning.
So you look at a forecast like this, and you got LaGuardia, which is a crap airport to begin with.
That's great airport.
Yeah. that spells recipe for disaster. You cannot operate. I mean, half a mile. I think I don't know which runway it is, but that's not even landing minimums. I think you need 1 mile for.
One's a half, one's 3/4.
Yeah.
Um, there were some operations of LaGuardia yesterday. We ran that one right into the ground. The DCs did not. Our the regional partners were unable to operate. It was below their landing minimums, but the mainline fleet, man, blast right in there. No big deal. Again, I'm
Well,
glad I was not at work last
and,
night.
and it goes back to what I was saying that airlines are pretty proactive at canceling their flying when they see forecasts like this ahead of time. We have a third party company that does our weather for us, and they'll provide us a TAF, and the airline will make a decision based on that weather. And I have to say, it was about 300 cancellations yesterday out of Newark, Boston, LaGuardia, some Philly cancellations. So overall, it was a very good proactive. They did a lot of the
same thing with us. It was a well managed irregular operation, a well managed storm.
Non-hub to hub.
Yeah, I think I think we maybe canceled mainline, canceled maybe 100, 200 yesterday. Not a huge impact. Mainline the connection Acme Junior flights, they didn't operate. They didn't operate very well. But I always look at the next day. How does the airline recover? And I always call the day after a major snowstorm, IROP, like a regular operation, which we call IROP, like that. I call it the hangover day. Just how bad was our hangover? And when I was in training today, we only had 14 cancellations, which means we only had 14 days cancel, overlap to the next day. So, I mean, we were almost back at it full throttle, at least on the main line today. I think some of the regional carriers had a bigger headache today.
Yeah. Well, I worked a West Coast sector today, so I didn't have to worry too much about the East Coast.
All right.
But it goes back to field conditions, and if you want to touch on that a little bit, or
yeah, let's move that one up because some reason I put that at the bottom. Field conditions. I think this one came into the notes after our conversation we had on my drive home. What field conditions basically are is the airport goes out and the airport authority is in charge of plowing and keeping their taxiways clean. And the airport authority, after the accident in the late 90s from Southwest overrunning in Midway, there were regulation changes where now the airports, and even still within the last 2 years, the regulations got harder with how they have to operate and keep their notices to airmen and their runway conditions up to now more of an international standard opposed to our previous American standard. There's a lot more work for the airport authority, but they have to keep the airport authority keeps the airport open. The airlines don't plow the runways. That's not our job. That's the airport's job. Airlines pay buco amount of dollars to pay to operate into an airline. If you want to know about how much buco dollars we pay, check out Tales from the Terminal blog. Jennifer over there did a great post recently in the last few weeks about airport fees at an airport, and it was jaw dropping for me. I didn't realize we paid that much to operate to a medium, mid-sized Midwestern airport. That I'm surprised we cover the revenue it costs us to operate there, honestly, but evidently we do because we keep flying there. So, it's their job. Some airports are better than others. I'm sure at Acme North, you guys have your rock star airports that are the best to work with. Ours is Minneapolis St. Paul. MAC, the Minneapolis Airport Commission, they rock the heck out of keeping an airport open in a snowstorm. I think there's been 2 times in the last 25 years that Minneapolis has to close due to snow. One of them was this year. But they rock the heck out of it. And then there are others that don't do as good of a job.
I'll tell you, some of the better places are actually the ski location airports. I never worry too much, like Jackson Hole or Eagle or some of those airports. They always get snow every day. They
They
keep
have
up
to.
with it. They
There's
have no
airports.
issues getting in. No issues. O'Hare, generally speaking, pretty good. Not too many issues there. East Coast is a
New,
different story.
New York airports. Okay. We have a hub that should remain nameless that sucks a lot. And they're in the north and they shouldn't suck, but they do. Dang you, Wayne, and your county.
Yeah.
So they're issued by NOTAMs. We're going through with FICONs and all that. And they give pilots and dispatchers, we'll dig a little deep in this, but I think I might want to make this the real the TOPAR and all that stuff a real topic for the next time. But they give us conditions and performance engineering. Then from each airline goes and runs numbers, and airplanes have manufacturers give airlines stopping distance stuff to do in certain situations that coexist with these field conditions that we get. Then they tell us how long it's going to stop for a given weight for a different configuration for an airplane. So we know that when we're landing in the snowstorm that we're not going to keep going. It's not like that scene in Airplane where it's gate 32, gate 33, gate 34. No, we're gonna land, turn off, and be safe all the way to the gate because that's our goal. What we need to do. So, looking at the next constraint, talk about thunderstorms. Thunderstorms impact a city by you can't land in a thunderstorm. Microbursts happen. Many airliners have had crashes, one in Dallas, one in Little Rock, and a few more along the way due to trying to land in a thunderstorm that has caused loss of life to a major way. And the Northeast is special where you don't necessarily need to have a thunderstorm on the field to cause a ground delay program in the Northeast. Greg, you want to talk a little bit about our special airports in the Northeast and the thunderstorms over Pittsburgh that cause copious amounts of delays?
Terrible. So, you get into severe weather season, or not even then. You get late spring, early summer. You get thunderstorms that park over the Ohio Valley region. Basically, anything east of the Ohio Valley River. So going into the New York airports or the DC airports, they want a certain flow going in there. And if you got a system of thunderstorms that is parked, let's say, over Ohio, well, that's going to screw up your arrival flow and your routing. So what happens is ATC is going to say, well, wait a second, we got these thunderstorms over here. Let's either change the route, or we got to slow you down or stop the operation going into those thunderstorms. So they'll put out reroutes, right? So, okay, now you can't fly the preferred route. And especially with Newark or Boston, when you get these thunderstorms, they're going to put out a ground delay program, or you would know the term for this better than I would, the AFP
program.
AFP, right? So just to meter the traffic through there. Yeah. You want to explain AFP? Because that's kind of my...
While the thunderstorm is not exactly hitting the airport, causing the problem, when you have a line of thunderstorms that park itself over, let's call it Toronto south to West Virginia, and if they continue even further south down into the Carolinas, Tennessee area, you have a line of thunderstorms there that literally blocks off all of the jet routes into and out of New York. And I've seen flights get around them before. I've seen Kennedy to LA flights fly over Jacksonville, down over Atlanta. You fly 2 hours south to finally turn west to where you're going, where normally you'd fly up over Chicago and Iowa to get on your way to LA. But airplanes can't fly through thunderstorms due to turbulence. I mean, it'll literally could literally rip the wings off. There have been accidents before of early in the era of aviation, especially jet aviation and pressurized airplanes, where they tried to fly through thunderstorms and they got severe turbulence and extreme turbulence and ripped the wings off and crashed. So it is possible, uh, and that's why we don't do it. And you still have this incredible volume going into New York that now needs to try to get around, and it doesn't happen. And now you have to go, instead of 4 or 5 streams into New York, you go down to 1 or 2. And now you're, again, it's the same thing. There's a constraint on the system, and you're trying to fit 20 pounds of airplanes in a 2 pound bag, and it doesn't work. So you really need to throttle back your flow into those airports. And it's these kind of things that happen, that cause the constraint to cause you an ATC delay. That's not controllable. Airlines want to fly our schedule normally, but the airport's over capacity. The airspace with an AFP program is over capacity, and we can't do that. Now, talking about airspace flow programs, this time of year, it's almost ending. I think it'll end in March. The spring break time frame. Uh, Saturdays from Thanksgiving to depending on where Easter is, mid March to mid April, you'll have a lot of airplanes on Saturdays going south to the Caribbean. Spring snowbirds, spring breakers, all of that. It's people headed down to the Caribbean that, and now you have an excess amount of airplanes going south that the airspace and the airports down there can't handle it. So uh, that's what you got to do, and it causes delays. So talking a little bit about what I've learned over the last couple of days is, how does an airline manage this elephant that is dropped into their operation that we now have to handle? ATC comes out and says, here are your delays. Boom, deal with them. And what's interesting is they give us some tools, and we'll talk about them. The first one is FSM, which Greg talked about a little bit earlier. But that's Flight Situation Monitor or something like that. Schedule Monitor. That's what it is. But it basically goes through and tells you what is going into an airport. And all the airlines, every single airline gives their data on all of their flights to the FAA. And anytime we delay a flight or anything, every single flight that goes through the schedule, anytime an airline delays it, that information gets sent to the FAA. And the FAA and a third-party source, I think it's Metron, one of they're a big aviation geek company, and a bunch of really smart people take all that data, separate it out to airports, and then display it graphically. And I'll have a picture in the show notes of what an arrival demand chart looks like, and it displays it on a chart where each airplane's going to come from. Now, you pull up an airport, let's call it JFK, and you will see all the arrivals in each hour. You can then even break it down to a half hour or a 15-minute period for the arrivals. And then that same chart will show that arrival demand, that arrival rate that we had talked about prior on there. So you can see when it's a bar chart. It's really second grade math that you're looking at, that it's a bar chart. And as you, if the bar chart goes above the arrival demand line, there's too many airplanes that are trying to land at the airport at that time. And if there's too many airplanes, the FAA needs to do something about it. And they will issue these ground delay programs, ground stops, and there's a whole bunch of other bag of tricks that they can play.
I don't mean to interrupt you for a second, but just so people can get a visual of what this looks like, it's not the actual FSM program, but if you go on the fly.faa.gov/OIS website and you click on the left, there's the big blue circle that says FAA, and under products, there's the airport arrival demand chart, and you can pull up by airport what the current demand is and what the arrival rate is, and you can break it down between 15-minute, 30-minute, and 60-minute.
Yeah,
I
would suggest looking at that link that Greg said. So thanks for that, Greg. Yeah. I would suggest doing that in the morning, so you can see a whole day's flights, because that's a scrolling thing that goes through there on a period that they have displayed. So if you look at the morning, you can look at a whole day's operation at an airport. So we look at FSM and we do that. Now, with FSM, and when we're over and we know that there's going to be a program coming out, we have a way to model a ground delay program as an airline. Now, each airline, before a ground delay program comes out, each airline is invited to a telephone conference with the FAA Command Center, which is based just outside of Washington, D.C. So the Command Center gets on the phone with us, and they say, hey, we have this constraint at, let's pick on another airport, Charlotte. We have a constraint at Charlotte. And this is our problem at Charlotte. We send out a proposal, and usually the FAA will do this. They'll send out a proposed ground delay program for all the airlines to look at. And the FAA facilities involved, so it'd be Atlanta Center and Charlotte Tracon and Charlotte Tower, and then all of the airlines, which they call the stakeholders, will then get on this telephone conference and talk about the what is best for their airline. And it's, my job when I'm working that position, or when I will be working that position, to advocate what would be best for Delta. I mean, shoot, Acme. All right, what time are we doing recording here? Because I'm going to have to edit that out. Oh, that's my first slip up. All right, holy cow, we've been going for 125. I need a pen. Okay, so it's my I need to advocate for Acme and what would be best for Acme. Now, what's best for Acme is not going to be best for Acme North. It's not going to be best for Acme Roadrunner. It's not going to be best for anybody else. I mean, Acme North with a Newark program might want a 1,550-mile scope, because that doesn't touch Houston and it doesn't touch Denver, their hubs to their hubs. So those flights would run on time. I mean, so each airline has a certain gist on it. And we're all the same. We all know each other from conferences and stuff like that. There's kind of an unwritten rule where if it's your hub airport, you kind of get a little bit of more of a majority and kind of get to lead how you want to run things, opposed to another airline. There have been backdoor conversations I've heard before where airlines will talk to each other beforehand to say, hey, if you do this, we'll support you with this. But if you say this, we're going to say, oh, no, we want everybody to be delayed. And things like that. So it's intriguing. And when you plot out a delay in this program, the larger the scope, the more airplanes and airports you affect, there comes to a point where the average amount of delay just it flatlines. It's like a big half curve as it comes down. And so, like, if you can picture a line graph, the top peak delay will be up at the top with the smaller scope. Those close-in flights get the most delay. And when you brought it out to everybody, there comes a point where it levels out. And once it finally levels out, then Well, that's the correct for it. So that's what's going on with that. So that's fun.
No, I have to say, we get to listen to those telcons. They're on our phones, and every 2 hours they come on automatically. And I always get chuckles sometimes when the other airlines and the FAA start going at it, and saying, well, we just
fiddling with? What are you fiddling with? We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Well, we can, but when you're fiddling with your camera, you're creating static.
No, I'm trying to get my charger in here, so sorry. My iPad is about to die.
All right. So, start again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, we're good now. You stopped fiddling.
Okay. No, I was saying, what was I saying? Oh, we get to listen to those telecons on every 2 hours. They come on our phones, and it's interesting and funny on occasion listening to the different airlines banter with each other and banter with the FAA, and they get into some pretty heated discussions on occasion. About the arrival rates, and it's just funny because sometimes you'll hear Acme North say something, and then you'll hear Acme South disagrees. We're not on board with this. Or then another airline will come on and say, we disagree. And then the FAA gets frustrated because then they're like, okay, let's have a sidebar. 15 minutes later, then you get all the airlines on the sidebar and you're still disagreeing about what plan you want to go with. Yeah, it's like an endless circle sometimes, but it's interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it is fun. So once this this plan gets finally negotiated, the program comes out and all of the flights going to said airport goes through slots, and we get our slots. The slots come out, then once the slots come out, then we get to manipulate them in a different program, and that program is called ESM. I have no clue what ESM stands for. I got so many acronyms thrown at me the last 2 days. I've completely gone through and got wiped out of them. But what ESM does is ESM is an ability to the ESM allows us to swap our slots with ourselves. So if we have an airplane that has a slot, say at noon is their time to take off, but now they have a maintenance delay, then now we have the ability to swap that with other flights to get them improvement of times to go through and get them a better time. So that's what ESM does. And what's really interesting is that the airline then gets to control their regional, their subcarriers, all of their regional airlines as well. We get to control their slots. So the major airline goes through and controls the slots of everybody else. So it's a unique tactic that we have to go through. Now, Greg, you might need to try to unmute yourself. Yeah, you're muted. I muted you, and
is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Oh, good. I had to plug in my charger, so sorry.
I know, I understand, but I muted you, and I'm starting to be distracted by the freaking chat room over here. So now I understand why the guy that's distracting me always hides that when he's talking. It's funny. This is great. So it's kind of fun that you get to go through and manipulate your slots. Now, there's ways that you can run a program. There are some airlines that have programs that base their flights with revenue and throw their regional partners on under the bus. And because they're smaller airplanes, those airplanes don't generate enough revenue. Those flights automatically go to the bottom of the program. They get delayed, and their regional partners have to cancel. That's one method of dealing with the delay program. Another method, which is kind of more the way that Acme runs it, is especially if that program is going into one of our hubs. If everybody's an hour late, that just means that hub arrival bank is an hour late. The hub time's an arrival an hour late. That means you're not really going to misconnect everybody because all the flights arrived an hour late, which means everyone's still going to have 40 minutes to connect to their flight that was an hour late. Well, now that everyone's an hour late, everyone's still going to make their connections, and all the passengers are happy. And everyone's happy. The whole system is happy. The people are happy because they've run the constraints down. The airline is happy because we're still running all of our flights in there. We're just an hour late, and the passengers are happy because they're still making their connections. While they might think they're an hour late, but they'll still make their connections. So it's an amazing tool. It's fun, and it's a brand new puzzle that I have to deal with. I'm no longer swapping airplanes, but it's more of a global puzzle that I'm dealing with now, which is a lot of fun.
One exception to that, well, at least one of Acme North's hubs out on the West Coast, San Francisco. Um,
Ugh.
they're another Newark, just on the west side of the country. Uh, they're on a ground delay program.
I'd call it 75% of the time.
Most there's a cloud in the sky in San Francisco, and they can't get visuals over the bridge and going in. They call a ground delay program every day. And if you get that marine layer, just so anyway, San Francisco has a normal rate of 54 airplanes an hour. Okay, so most days, probably from about their heavy arrival bank is from 18, starting about 18Z through pretty much the whole day. They'll drop the arrival rate down to 36 usually, depending upon the thickness of the layer and all that kind of stuff. Um, the problem with San Francisco is they'll put the ground delay program out early in the morning. So the early morning arrivals that are scheduled to get in are going to be held upline. But the flights that are scheduled to go out are the airplanes are originating there overnight. So you're going to see a lot of misconnects or people who are connecting on in San Francisco, a lot of delays and the misconnects because their planes already in San Fran. They're not delayed offline. So, and their international bank is pretty early too. So it's not uncommon to see an hour and a half, 2 hour flow control delays going in there, and then people missing their connections. It's a different kind of problem out there just because of the timing and everything.
Yeah, and San Francisco is so unique because it happens all the time that depending on when the marine later burns off, which is their constraint, is dependent on how long the scope is into the airport. So if it burns off earlier, the scope is smaller for the morning ground delay program. If it burns off later, the scope is larger to capture more of those.
Right.
Alrighty, so
You disappeared.
did I disappear?
You're there now.
Okay. I'm glad I'm back.
You blinked out, but you're back.
Okay. I think that's as deep as I want to go into
Did
this.
you talk about ground stops?
No. Did you want to talk about ground stops?
Sure, why not?
Okay, ground,
Why a ground stop happens?
you talk about a ground stop, then I'll fill
Oh,
in.
ground stops are my favorite. Actually, ground stops are helpful sometimes, at least to from a when there's bad weather or whatnot. So basically, what a ground stop is for people who don't know. So, let's say you're flying into Newark, right? And there's thunderstorms at the field or whatever. The FAA will say, wait a second, we've got this weather situation happening over here. We've got too many planes that are currently in the air heading towards this airport. We don't want any more because we're already in a bottleneck situation. We can't handle the planes that are currently in the air. We don't want any more. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, stop all airplanes that are not already in the air heading towards this destination to Newark. But they'll put out a certain mileage. They call it tiers. So Newark may say anybody within the first tier, which is 500 miles scope.
The tiers are based on centers that border the airport that's being constrained. And ground stops can either happen just for a temporary situation. We're going to ground stop and, there's enough recovery in the later hours to handle that later demand. Or ground stops trigger ground delay programs because now you just stop something because of a constraint. And then now there's no recovery until late that you now need to delay every program and meter everybody. All that additional flow that you just chopped off that was supposed to go there now has to have somewhere to go, but there's no more room over your arrival rate, so you now have to delay everybody else to make room for them.
Right. So how a ground stop can be effective, I'll give you a personal story. So yesterday with the snowstorm out east, right? Newark put out a ground stop before some of my flights got in the air. And that's a huge relief from a dispatch perspective because now I don't have to worry about those airplanes. They're safely on the ground somewhere at O'Hare, Denver, wherever. And now,
or it's a huge pain in the ass from the dispatch perspective.
Well,
because now you have the captain sending you an ACARS every 10 minutes. What about now? What about now? How's it changed now? Can I go now? Should we go back to the gate now? Should we do this? Should we do that? What about this?
You're right. That
in my opinion, no, not dissing those crews. To me, in my opinion, those are the great captains because they want to be informed. They want the best information for them to make a decision about their flight. So I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying there's some guys out there that will ask you 10,000 questions as soon as they get stopped.
Yep.
And sometimes ATC, you got your airplane that is just about to hit the end of the runway as the printer's printing off with the ground stop. They can read it and they go, Acme 123 cleared for takeoff.
Yeah. No, I've seen that happen too. You're number one for takeoff, just let them go. They don't want to deal with it. But my thought is, okay, they're safely on the ground. That's one less airplane that I'm going to have to worry about potentially diverting somewhere or having some sort of plan B that I don't need to worry about. I just need to worry about, okay, go back to the gate or something. Answering ACARS messages, but and that saved us yesterday quite a bit in going out east.
Yeah, and I've had ground stops save us before, and then you have those rolling ground stops, and we've had situations before. We have rolling ground stops we've had Atlanta ground stop for 4 hours straight, and you stop a behemoth for 4 hours straight. It's hard to get that ball back rolling.
Yeah, you're done at that point.
We're talking one more thing real quick. And like we talked about O'Hare being a gate constrained airport, there are some other gate constrained airports. And how Atlanta is for Acme, Atlanta is a gate constrained airport, especially after a ground stop, because it's almost like a tsunami of airplanes coming into the airport. That now you have all of these airplanes trying to get in there at the same time, and there's just not enough gates. You overrun the gates, you overrun the station, and that's not a good thing. So, their Acme will institute a ground delay program just for Acme to run a lower rate, so and all of that. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think Acme North will reduce the rate just for our planes or whatnot.
Yeah, some airplanes till they get a good rate. Others want to run everything into the ground. I think we've beat this one to a dead horse. It was a great topic. I honestly think ground delay program. Then you could go deeper. I mean, I'm taking 3 days of 10 hours of training, so I'm taking 30 hours of training on a topic like this and how to run this whole thing. So to bring it down to an hour in a podcast is really doesn't do the whole topic justice. But if you have more questions on this, please send us an email, contact.flyinginlife.com. We'd love to hear your questions and comments. But this is what we get paid to do. I mean, this is what airlines are trying to do. We're trying to run everything. We try to run everything good and on time, and things like that. But when we have a constraint on the system, we have to deal with it, and that's what we have to do. So I think that might wrap it up. Do you have anything you want to talk about?
I think we covered a lot.
I think we did too. I mean, we've been going for a while. I mean, we're closing in on the airline pilot guy.
I was just gonna say we gotta,
I mean, if we want to be if we want to be like airline pilot guy, we got to go for another hour and 45.
I don't know if we have enough to talk about.
No, not with
talked about life, or have we talked about life?
Not with boring everybody. We've talked about life at the beginning.
Yeah.
I have to work in the morning. I
have to go to
school. I don't even know what we're doing tomorrow. My guess it has something to do with ground delay programs, FSM, ESM, and theory tomorrow, which it's interesting. I mean, as I told our instructor, I'm like, dude, I eat that up. I'm a huge nerd. I like getting in there and trying to figure out how it works. And the last couple of days at work for me has just absolutely positively opened up my thoughts and my understanding of ground delay programs and ATC operations and really how the FAA isn't out there just to screw airlines over. It's legitimate need, that it's a service that they provide not only to think about themselves, but it's like you said, they put out that ground stop the other day that stopped Newark, and yeah, not good. So
yeah, it just causes more of a headache for them somewhere else, so there's a reasoning for it.
So with that, I think we're gonna close up the show. So I'm gonna find there's just closing script here somewhere. Greg, where can we find you on Twitter?
Twitter, I'm still at WXFan1978. I'm not very good on the whole Twitter thing usually.
You're old.
I know. My big thing is Facebook, and I know the younger generation doesn't like Facebook. But so if you want to contact me, find me on Facebook. That's probably your best.
Greg Dubin on Facebook. Search for him.
But
you also do some weather stuff on Facebook. You want to talk a little bit about what you do on that? I mean, it's Chicago, all Chicago based. If you live in the Chicago metro area and you want a guy that talks about the weather that's not Tom Skilling, I mean, we'll call him Tom Skilling Jr. Greg does some stuff like that. Talk about that. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
So I have a weather fan group page, I guess you want to call it. It's Chicago. I think the name of the group is Chicagoland Chicago Weather. See, I don't even know the name of my group. How sad is that? Find me on Facebook. Just send me a friend request. But basically, what I do is I'll put out a lot of I do a lot of the advanced forecasting type stuff for Chicago. I'll pull up all the high resolution and GFS models and look at down the road and post stuff that I find interesting about the weather that's coming up, or maybe places that have interesting weather. I'll comment on that, post some cool stuff about it. During severe weather season, I go all geeky about it, and I start posting like the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, charts and stuff. And on occasion, I'll go out and do some storm chasing locally and post pictures. And
that's what I miss about Northern Illinois.
Yeah, but you know what? Out here, there's not a whole lot. I mean,
there's not a whole lot, but this time here in the South, if you get a solid cold front coming through, there's a whole lot, but you can't see anything. And I wouldn't storm chase here at all. There's we have pine trees everywhere around me, and you can't storm chase and see through 100-foot pine trees very well.
No,
you can't see what's coming at you. You can't keep yourself safe.
If you really want a good storm chase, you got to park a car in Oklahoma or Texas from about late March through end of May. You'll see all that stuff out there. And I've done that. I did that, about 10 years ago. Went on a storm chase and got some. I didn't get close to a tornado, but I did get some footage and was able to
You've seen a tornado in real life?
Yes.
I envy.
But not out here. I mean, out here, I can count on one hand how many tornadoes have occurred, or that I've actually I haven't seen any out here, but because it just doesn't happen all the time. But I am a weather geek, and that's as I say, I'm a full-time dispatcher, and by night, a weather nerd.
Amateur meteorologist.
Yes, so
with more of a small A, because you have a lot of more background.
People make fun of me at work. They call me Tom Skilling Jr., just like you did. And they'll always come up to me. He'll go, "Hey, Dubin, what's the weather going to be tonight?" Sunny and 80. That's always my response. Sunny and 80. I never bet on the weather. So anyway, send me a friend request on Facebook. I'll give you the link to my page, and you can check it out.
On Twitter, I'm at Flying in Life on Twitter. Facebook, I do Facebook for personal things. We are on Facebook. Flying in Life is a Facebook page on the Twitter, on the Facebooks as well. You can go to flyinglife.com and see show notes for this episode. That'll be in flyinglife.com/2018/32 will be the hyperlink for that. And questions, comments, things you want us to talk about, any other email reminders, things that you want to say, please send us an email, contact@flyinglife.com. We'd love to hear questions and things for like that. And I'm just going to say one other thing. If you haven't heard, there's a new podcast that I absolutely enjoy. It's called Opposing Bases. Two controllers. There are radar controllers and tower controllers. They are duly qualified at a medium-sized airport in the I call it the Mid-Atlantic-ish region, I think, from the Guess the Airport hints that they drop. AG and RH do a great job, and it's a great episode thing for that. It's really cool. I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot from the controller perspective. And as soon as I am done producing this podcast, I will be going and producing some feedback for them. So check them out. I think it's opposingbases.com, but search them up for the store. I think they're about 10, 12 episodes so far. But it's a really, really great new podcast. Make sure you check them out, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. So that's going to wrap it up for tonight. So I'm going to play this music. And with that, we are going to say good night and have a good one, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.
So our friends in the chat room also want me to plug the Airline Pilot Guy show. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, we don't listen to the podcast. So I don't plug in, but hey, we'll say it anyway. If you somehow found this podcast without listening to Captain Jeff and crew, go check them out.
You got 4 hours of your life.
As Craig says, you have 4 hours of your life to give away every week to a podcast. Go check them out. All right. Hey, are you free or are you going to bed?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
I'm free right now.
All right. I was going to do a hangout with the people watching and the other aviation chat group. You want to stick around?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to use the restroom in the facilities, and I will send that link out. I'll send it to you the same.
Sounds good.
All right, give it like 3 minutes. I need another beer too.
Me too.
Okay, maybe like 4 minutes.
I need something to eat. I'll be right back, too.
All right, sounds good. I'll send you a link in your email.
All right.
All right, see ya.